3, 2, 1.
Hey, I'm Joel Wanasek with Unstoppable Recording Machine, and today we're going to talk about EQing guitars, and we're going to be using the song Coordinates by August Burns Red, which we're featuring this month on Nail the Mix. You definitely want to check that out. So this is going to be a 3-part series. This is the first part. It's going to get progressively more difficult and complicated. Today's video is going to just be an introduction to EQing guitars, and I'm just going to walk you through some different things. But you want to make sure that you check your email because you're going to be getting more videos here in this series, and they're going to get more complicated and cooler. So first things first, let's dig in and just have a quick listen to the song here and get a feel for what's in the session. Okay, so I've got some drum stems and vocal stems and bass stems and stuff going on, but I've got a lot of really raw, unedited guitar stuff that's just straight off the multi-track session that you would get with Nail the Mix. And we're going to go and we're just going to take a look at these. And like I said, in progressive videos, we're going to actually mix these into the track and finish them off and stuff and get them slamming. But I've just kind of got like a rough mix going on here. And like I said, all the guitars are raw. So let's just start out with the heavy guitars. And there's a lot of different considerations here with heavy guitars because, you know, amplifiers and they create distortion. And it's just kind of almost like a broadband noise. And heavy guitars in a mix are often a balance of trying to get rid of anything that's harsh, you know, tighten up the sound so it's got a nice amount of headroom and clarity in the mix, and it sits amongst big drums and big bass, which can be kind of complicated because, you know, in a metal mix, everything needs to be big and everything needs to be in your face, and it requires usually a lot of EQing to get the guitars to sound really amazing and really fantastic in the mix. So let's take a look at some of the basic EQ moves that you can do. Here's what they sound like. Okay, now before we get into any sort of like diagnosing and trying to get these to sound fantastic, let's just go through some of the common EQ moves and some of the tools that you can use as a mixer. And I'm just going to use my stock EQ here in Cubase. You can use whatever one you use. You know, some people like the really fancy EQs like Fab Filter and stuff like that, which are fantastic, or the Wave stuff, or, you know, if you're in Pro Tools, you can use the Pro Tools stock EQ or whatever you want to use. I'm just going to use the stock one in Cubase here to kind of make it really easy and really simple for this demonstration. Okay, so there's a couple of things going on here. A very common thing with guitars you might see a lot of mixers doing is trying to create headroom in the mix. Okay, so guitars, like I said, they're broadband noise and they eat a lot of headroom and they take a lot of space. There's a lot of unnecessary frequencies in them that we usually don't need. So it's very common for a lot of mixers to go in and use high cuts or low cuts, or high pass filters or low pass filters, I should say, to remove unwanted frequency regions. So, you know, Cubase has a decent amount of stock stuff right here. They have the high cut, low cut feature built in. So let's go start with a high pass filter and just listen to how it affects the sound. So, you know, a lot of the guitar's energy, usually the lowest a guitar goes is, I want to say, like 100 to 80 hertz in the frequency range, which can really start crossing over to the bass and create a lot of mess. So it's good to kind of pull off some sub. If you listen to these guitars, there's a lot of sub in them, right? So let's just go and start filtering a little bit and see how it affects the sound. Around there, we've tightened up the bottom a bit. Move the filter up to 160 hertz, and we're starting to get a little bit thinner. We go up to like 400, and we're starting to get a kind of like a lo-fi radio thing, which is obviously not going to sound good in a mix. Let me just play that for demonstration real quick. You know, I know we're not mixing yet, but you can definitely see big picture. You know, we're going to need some bottom end in the guitars, but, you know, we want to get rid of some of the stuff in the bottom. So let's just tighten up the bottom end a little bit here. I'm going to go back to around like 100 where I had it earlier and just listen to the sub, how it gets just the rumble out of the guitar without necessarily losing the bottom end. creates a lot of clarity. Well, the same thing goes true with a low pass filter. You know, we got a lot of fizz on the top of these, on top of guitars in general. Though these guitars are actually recorded pretty dark, which is nice. They don't have a ton of fizz, but you'll be able to see, you kind of pull some of that white noise off the top. So let's just take the low pass filter here and have a listen. See, as we go down too far, what happens is we're starting to kind of like lose the tone and the top end of the brightness of the guitar, which obviously we're going to need the notes of the guitar to cut through. So it's always a balance, but you know, you can hear if I go up a little bit higher, let's just say around here, you can hear I kind of pull some of the white noise off the top. Let's listen to it. If we were actually mixing, that would just create a bit more of a space for things like the cymbals or the vocal top end, you know, so we can have a much more open high end. It's just getting rid of noise that we don't need. You know, maybe there's some synths or some strings or something that we want a really nice, you know, high energy, frequency energy into. So, you know, generally those are things that people would like to do. Another really popular EQ move that is very powerful for tone shaping, and you got to distinct. I like to break EQ down into two different parts, right? So I like to think about it as like tone shaping, right? And let's think about musical words. Like, is the sound warmer? Does it need to be brighter? Does it need to be softer? Does it need to be thicker? You know, those words I associate with tone shaping. The other way I look at it is sculpting. Okay, so we have tone shaping, we have sculpting, and sculpting is like going in surgically with EQ and pulling out certain frequencies or ranges and like, you know, removing the harsh spike from 4K or softening the top end or something like that. So let's start with shelves, and shelves are a really, really nice way to get let me get one going. Kind of just do tone shaping. So for example, if you listen to this guitar, like I said, it's got a lot of bottom end in it. So if we wanted to make it a little bit brighter, there's two ways we could do it. We could do, you know, like a low shelf here, a low cut shelf, or we could add more treble up here. So let's hear what both of them do. They kind of both accomplish the same thing, but at the same time, it's different. So let's have a listen. Also boost a ton of low end in the guitars, which is, you know, probably going to crush our mix. I'll just put it in for fun here. See how much more clarity we get when we tighten up the bottom end. Okay, so that's what a shelf sounds like on the bottom end. So one more time. Now what happens if I boost some top end into this? I want to delete my shelf. Okay, so let's boost some top end here with a shelf and see what happens instead. And also make it darker. Now, the interesting thing about the top boost is you're kind of keeping the characteristics of the low end intact originally, but you're boosting up the top end here, but there's some harsh frequencies and some things in the guitar that have kind of come up that I think would need some work surgically. So, you know, you can use them in combination. Whereas if I just cut the low end here, the guitar is just a little bit smoother sounding and might not need so much spot EQ treatment work. So, you know, you got to just judge and use your ears and experiment and try to figure out what sounds best in the mix. And again, like I said, the next video we'll be getting into that and getting these guitars to really slam into the mix. So the next major weapon here we have in EQing is the bell. So let's just say we're going to come in and maybe I'm going to make these a little thinner and a little bit brighter, right? So the bell is very, 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 very powerful because we can go very wide or we can go very narrow. So we can pull out individual frequencies by sweeping. Like that's pretty annoying, right? Let's cut it. I can get the guitar a lot louder and a lot brighter. I shouldn't say louder, I should say brighter. A lot brighter and more in your face, but I can get rid of that harshness. Let me disengage it here. The guitar is a lot smoother sounding. So that's what something really narrow, like a very narrow bell here is great for like cutting out individual things. Like for example, we have a rumble in the guitar. Let's try to go find that and nuke that. Just slightly pulls out some of that kind of underwater sounding pressure stuff that's just like in the guitar, masking it, muddying it up. So bells can be really powerful. If you go more broad band with the bell, it can become a little bit more tone shaping and sculpting, but in a particular region. So let's just say we want to take a little bit of the, let me bring my low cut back in here. Let's just say we want to bring off a little bit of the, just without pulling any particular frequencies out, let's just make the guitar top end, because we brightened it, a little bit more relaxed. So let's go find like the 2 to 4K region. Here when I boost that, it gets a little harsh, so let's bring it down. To me, I like to call that removing the ear pressure, because that's the kind of stuff that kind of hits my ear a little bit strange, and it always kind of sounds just a little bit harsh. So it's a very different sound doing that versus doing a really narrow bell. Let me pull it out here. Have a listen. So here we attack the whistle. Versus smoothing out the area. And who knows, maybe you like both. It definitely sounds a little bit too extreme, but you can see the power of the tool. So that's a basic rundown of some of the things we can do them. Let's hear them on some of the cleaner guitars now and just see how these EQ tricks affect our clean guitars. So let's have a listen. So the same thing, there's some bottom end in there. There's some top end in the guitars that, it's smooth, but they might need to be a little brighter or something. We're just going to bring out the filters. Let's see what happens when we start filtering. Just by sliding around the filter, you get different types of bottom end in there, and some of that might be desirable based off the goals of the mix and how the bass sounds, and some of it may not. On the same thing, let's hear the low pass and see what that does. What's cool about clean guitars is some of that really high-end air kind of gives them that really nice chimey clarity, and there's not really a lot of white noise or anything nasty going up on in there in the top end. So really, it's not super popular to low pass them, at least in my experience and the people that I've observed mixing, but definitely high pass filtering clean guitars is something that is pretty popular. So let's hear what some of the shelves do now to our clean guitar. Control the bass tone. Now let's do the same thing for the treble. You can really bring out the note. We can really make it warmer. Again, if we wanted to brighten these guitars, we can, you can contrast. Let's bring out some chime, but they're a little bit harsh. And if I go back to the other shelf, the bottom's a little bit tighter and it's not so harsh up on top, but it depends what kind of bottom end you like. The same thing comes in here with the bells. So if we go and we fish frequencies out with some of the bells, let's see what we can do here. Maybe we'll pull that cabinet resonance out. You can see a simple narrow cut like that really opens up the tightness of the track, but let's make it super wide just as a contrast. You see how now we're starting to lose some of the definition of the bottom end. So in this particular guitar track, it would be better to cut it narrowly, with a narrow cut, and it would definitely be smarter to do that. I think it sounds a lot better. Let's come up here to the top end and play around and see what we can get. Some of that harsh stuff. Let's do a wider cut. I'm gonna boost the top end just to, you know, get some more sparkle out of it. That wider bell, it really relaxes the ear and makes it a little bit nicer to hear. Let's go nuke harsh frequencies now with a tight bell. And again, it's a very different sound, and depending on how this all works in the track, because again, this is all speculation, you can definitely see how different types of EQ moves might potentially translate. So we'll always be thinking of that. So let's take a look at some of the leads here and see what these guitar EQ moves do to the leads. So we have a lead guitar here. This guitar is kind of nasally, which may or may not be good in the actual mix. We don't know yet because we haven't actually started mixing anything. So let's try filters. There's just a little bit of white noise up on top. It's kind of scratchy. Let's try the high pass. Just a little bit of like unnecessary cabinet rumble down here. So you can definitely hear that filtering would improve this sound. So let me just put these two filters on. Now let's take the bells here, or actually, hold on, let's go into shelves first. So let me get rid of the filters just for demonstration. Let's go throw some shelves and see what happens. So depending on where we put the shelf, we can add some body and some mid-range to the guitar and thicken it up a little bit, but it also brings up some resonance in the bass. Let's try cutting. Clears up the rumble a little bit, but the guitar is still kind of nasally, so that may or not be the best EQ move for this. Let's have it listen to the top end shelf. Definitely increases a lot of the clarity of the note. Let me pull it back in frequency. Kind of makes it brighter while tightening some of the low end a little bit. Kind of rolls it off a little bit. Okay, so let's go after some frequencies with some narrow bells. Let's try getting rid of that mid-range honk. That's a little bit smoother, but you can see the narrow bell really kind of just, it makes it feel weird and a little bit underwater sounding, which is bad. It's kind of playing with the phase too much. So let's widen this up and see if we can maybe pull some of the honk out of the guitar here with a wider bell in more of a tone shaping fashion. And that definitely pulls some of the honk and makes it a little bit smoother. So you can kind of see how the wide range of EQ moves could potentially translate into a mix and help everything fit together. There's a lot of pros and cons and a lot of trade-offs, and it's really, really important to think about that stuff. So now I'm going to end this one here. And like I said, you got another one coming. And the next video is going to be using EQ to get the guitar tone to sit in the mix. So make sure you check your email. That's coming to you guys. And we're going to use all these EQ things that we just went through. And we're going to see it in action. And we're going to mix these guitars and get these really slamming and sounding fantastic. So please stick around. Thank you.